You're looking live at Space Launch Complex 4E at the Vandenberg Space Force Base in California, where we are just T-minus 51 minutes and 26 seconds away from the launch of a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket carrying Sentinel-6B, the twin to the Sentinel-6 Michael Freilich satellite that's currently on orbit. We are listening to the NASA launch manager, Tim Dunn. This is not going out over your broadcast, but we're listening to him. He's giving us an update that there are no vessels of concern in the area of the range where the payload fairings were expected to come down. Again, there were vessels there, I'd say about a half hour ago, but those have cleared the area. So that's not an issue. Together, let's talk about these satellites. Michael Freilich, Sentinel-6, was launched about 5 years ago, almost to the day. Together, Michael Freilich, Sentinel-6, and Sentinel-6B form the latest chapter in a mission that's been measuring sea level with remarkable precision for more than 30 years. Our liftoff time for today is 9:21 and 42 seconds Pacific Standard Time, 5:21:42 UTC, 12:21:42 Eastern Standard Time tomorrow. Weather conditions currently, we just got a great update from the launch weather officer for this mission, who reduced now the go to 10% go for launch this morning. I want to welcome my co-commentator for this launch, who is Nikki Russell, a vehicle systems engineer with NASA's Launch Services Program. Nikki, welcome, and thanks for being on the broadcast.
Thank you for having me. I am so excited to be here today, and I'm just truly honored and humbled to be speaking on behalf of this truly exceptional team.
Well, we're very fortunate to have you, and we appreciate your expertise in being here. And you've got a lot of great information to pass along to the audience. Let's start by talking about the T0. For those who are tracking, it was for the longest, all the way leading up to launch, 9:21 and 32 seconds, but we've moved 10 seconds into our 20-second window, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah, so the flight design team uses several inputs to derive that 20-second launch window. However, that window is primarily driven by orbit geometry. Sentinel-6B must launch into the exact same orbit and ground track as Sentinel-6 Michael Freilich flew back in 2020. That repeat cycle is what allows scientists to compare decades of precise sea level measurements.
And that precision is exactly what we have come to expect from the series of satellites that are monitoring ocean height. As we look out at the launch pad, it is a historic one. Slick 4E here, as it's called, Space Launch Complex 4E, has a long history with not only Launch Services Program, but also with the Space Force Base.
Yeah, so that history started back in 1964 on the Atlas Agena rockets and program. After that, it supported the Titan missions from Titan 3D all the way through Titan 4 until 2005. Then SpaceX took over this launch pad in 2011 and started making upgrades and modifications to support Falcon launches from right here in Vandenberg.
And this launch pad currently is enjoying some excellent launch weather, I must say. We just heard the launch weather officer give us an updated forecast saying it is 10% probability of violation, which means we are 90% go for today's launch. Again, 90% go. And the reason is we did have some concerns just the day before where we were only 40% go, and that's because of a large cold front that's out in the Pacific. Let's take a look at that now. You see that large mass of gray over to the left hand of the screen. That's some cold air that's heading on its way to California, but out in front of it were some cumulus clouds, rain clouds that were expected to push into the area and potentially cause an issue. However, the timing worked out such that we've been raining for the past 4 days here, but it has suddenly cleared today. Looked outside, I saw a little bit of the sun in the sky. That was great to see. After 4 days of rain and 2.5 inches of rain in the local area over that time, which is an incredible amount for this area in the central coast of California, the sky opened up and started to clear, and now we're getting a little bit of that clearing in our area of California, which is really good for launch.
Yeah, and watching that beautiful sunset as we were driving out here this evening was amazing. Just that sunset over the beautiful mountains was incredible.
I hadn't seen the sun in so long. I forgot what it looked like. It was awesome to see. Now, coming up at T-minus 43 minutes, we are going to listen in to the NASA Launch Manager poll. The NASA launch manager for today is Tim Dunn. He will be conducting his poll. Just ahead of that poll, we were listening to the nets as we were talking about the weather. We did have the Science Mission Directorate give their poll. They're overlooking the spacecraft, and that means that those people who are working on the spacecraft, all the teams that are working on the spacecraft, especially the team here, is good to go to start up with propellant load, which is a major milestone.
Yes, and it's also significant because this is at the point where we set our T0 time officially. After this point, once we get all those goes, there's no backing out of propellant loading.
And that starts at T-minus 35 minutes. As you mentioned, when they give that poll to go, it is going to lock it in. Sentinel-6B, once it gets into space, will join a number of other ocean-observing satellites. A couple of them are Sentinel-6A, which was renamed Sentinel-6 Michael Freilich, which again, as I mentioned, launched 5 years ago, almost to the day 5 years ago from right here at Vandenberg Space Force Base. It was a spectacular launch. it was during the day, and the weather was crystal clear and beautiful. One of the most clearest days I've ever seen here at the local area. And I showed you a little bit of that launch broadcast.
Yes, and if memory serves me right, you were able to actually watch it take off and then watch that booster return back to the landing site here.
Yeah, that was something special. Going back a little further, Jason 3 is also still up there in the orbit that Sentinel-6B will be going into, along with SWAT. So you've got Sentinel-6B seeking to join that caravan of satellites, which has got to make a very careful orbit insertion to get in there.
Yes, and so that trajectory was actually designed specifically for that purpose, to ensure that Sentinel-6B joins that caravan of long and rich history and heritage of these sea-level measuring satellites. It's going to be about 30 seconds following Sentinel-6 Michael Freilich in the orbit.
We're just a few seconds away now from getting the...
Momentarily, I'll be conducting the propellant and launch readiness poll. Just to give a summary of where we are this evening, I will recap. We had good collision avoidance report and made our entire 20-second launch window available. So we have adjusted the T0 to the preferred time of 05:21:42 UTC, and we are tracking towards that. Earlier in the countdown, we did have vessels in the payload fairing recovery ellipse. They are now deemed not a concern for launch, so we are no longer tracking that. Weather continues to be a watch item, but it's been trending favorably. Our probability of violation in weather is now down to 10% for thick clouds and cumulus clouds. And so, therefore, we've got a good spacecraft, got a good range, mostly good weather, and a great rocket. So let's conduct this poll and see if we can go put some propellant on board. I'd now like to conduct the propellant and launch readiness poll of the NASA team, beginning with NASA CE.
NASA CE, go.
Copy that, NASA CE. SMA.
SMA is go.
Copy SMA. SMD.
SMD is go.
Copy SMD. NASA MEM.
NASA MEM is go.
Copy NASA MEM. LSP.
LSP is go.
Copy LSP. NLM copies. The NASA team is go for propellant load and launch of Sentinel-6B. NLM out.
And that was NASA launch manager Tim Dunn that just concluded his poll, and it was goes across the board, and that does set the stage for SpaceX to now conduct their poll.
That's correct. And so the Falcon 9 team actually reported here on console at about T-minus 2 hours and 15 minutes. And at that point, they began their final review of the launch vehicle and ground systems. NASA's chief engineer, who today is Akash Vangani, conducted his technical readiness poll prior to T-minus 1 hour, followed by a data review of the stage avionics, guidance, navigation systems, controls, and propellant checkouts. Now that NLM poll has completed and is go for propellant load, SpaceX will do their technical readiness poll in just a couple of minutes. Prop load should complete at about T-minus 2 minutes.
Performed a clear to launch poll. NLM, are you clear to proceed to the launch auto sequence?
LD, this is NLM. We are go for propellant loading.
Copy that. LDA, is the range ready to proceed?
This is LDA. We are clear to launch.
Copy.
That was the SpaceX launch director conducting his poll. His poll's pretty quick, and so this now sets in motion everything that's necessary to begin the loading of propellants at T-minus 35 minutes.
The propellant loading poll is complete, and we are go for propellant loading. For non-urgent no-go conditions, brief the CE or LD, and they will approve aborting the countdown. For urgent issues affecting the safety of the operation, operators shall call hold on the countdown net. Launch control will abort the launch auto sequence immediately and proceed to the launch abort auto sequence. At T-minus 10 seconds, launch control will be hands-off and relying on automated abort criteria for the remainder of the count.
And the launch director from SpaceX giving a brief after giving the go for propellant load, which again begins at T-minus 35 minutes. This sets the stage for our T0 at 9:21 and 42 seconds Pacific Standard Time. Everything's ready to go, and weather really played a big role in all of this, Nikki, because they wouldn't have given the go to start propellant load if they didn't feel good and confident about the weather right at T0, and that's an indication that we're going to give it a shot.
Yes, and so the past 4 days have been pretty rainy, but prior to rolling out to the launch pad, the team does have launch commit criteria such that they need to ensure that there's no lightning at the launch pad at the time of launch. So we have a lightning monitoring system, which is actually a mission-unique service that LSP provides. Its first use was earlier this year on the SpaceX mission out of this same launch pad in March earlier this year. Prior to this team, the team only relied on that rollout criteria. So while the climate here in Vandenberg is much more mild compared to the East Coast in terms of lightning, the system helps provide a way for the team to gather real-time data should there be any lightning in the area this evening to assess potential impacts to the spacecraft's avionics.
And right now, at the moment, we do not expect to get any lightning with this system. It's less than 10%, according to the launch weather officer. But tomorrow, that changes up significantly, so it certainly is in play. Tomorrow's probability is only 40% go for weather. So, and then our lightning probability rises to 10%. So it's a good thing to have that lightning monitoring system in place. Certainly the spacecraft team, this is something they're watching very closely. I was talking to Parag Vase, the Sentinel-6B project manager based out of NASA's JPL down there in Pasadena, California. And he was telling me that, they don't expect many issues with the spacecraft, but sometimes things in the environment can affect it, and lightning is certainly a big one. This spacecraft is also extremely sensitive to radio frequencies, or RF, so they've gone to great measures to protect that. And in fact, we have a great view of the Sentinel-6 satellite encased inside of its fairing. There it is from the outside. You can see with the Sentinel-6 logo on the left-hand side, encapsulated between those two fairing halves, which SpaceX is going to try to recover. But this is looking inside the fairing halves, and there you see Sentinel-6. That we're looking at it a little bit of skew. The top would be just to the right there, and you were looking at the left side of its solar panel. The end of that solar panel will extend out once they do their solar panel extension, solar array deploy. But there you see it, which we haven't had too many views of the inside the spacecraft before launch before, but what a wonderful view.
Yeah, truly exceptional and really cool to be a part of this long and rich history.
The next milestones that will be significant for this particular shot is when those fairing halves separate and come off. And then, of course, for the separation event itself, which we expect roughly around 57 minutes after T0. We are standing by for the beginning of propellant load here in just a few seconds.
The launch auto sequence has started.
And with that simple call out, propellant load has begun. They have started RP1 flowing into the first stage of this rocket that you see right here. And that first stage, it's one that's flown before. It's got a history, having flown 2 previous missions for SpaceX. In fact, flying one in September and October, and now November. This booster's hitting 1 flight a month.
It's pretty impressive. I think it's a good point to make that this is SpaceX's 500th flight of a flight-proven booster, which is truly incredible.
Yeah, what a milestone that is. They've launched more than 560 Falcon 9s, but that is a big mark that they've flown 500 flight-proven boosters. And tonight it's the turn for Sentinel-6B. We will stand by now for our remaining milestones as we count down through propellant load and down to terminal count at T-minus 10 minutes. This is Mission Directors Center at the Vandenberg Space Force Base for coverage of Sentinel-6B. back to the Mission Directors Center here at Vandenberg Space Force Base. This is launch coverage of Sentinel-6B. We are T-minus 25 minutes and counting until liftoff, and you're looking inside the Mission Directors Center, where both Nikki and I were in the upper left-hand corner, along with your mission directors who are filling the room that you see there. The international collaboration for this mission is an incredible one. We have NASA, ESA, we have NOAA, we have EUMETSAT, and CNES out of France. You're looking now at the European Space Operations Center in Darmstadt, Germany. They will be taking over control of the Sentinel-6B satellite, bringing it online, searching for the acquisition of signal, and then making sure that they raise it to the proper orbit. In the meantime, they are watching along with the engineering team that is here. You have the operations team, which is right there in that room that you see there. And then we have the operations team, the engineering team, if you will, that is here in Vandenberg, that has been closely monitoring the Sentinel-6 satellite as it prepares for launch. We see Janet Petro in the second row. To the far right, our center director for the NASA Kennedy Space Center. Our friends from ESA also here. The ESOC will hand off the Sentinel-6B to EUMETSAT once they have it fully operational. And of course, EUMETSAT will get that data out to the rest of the world, that critical data that this spacecraft is become famous for. Incredible accuracy with determining the height of our oceans.
Yes, and that really helps inform our daily forecast that we get. If you're like me and you check the weather every single morning when you're trying to decide what you're going to wear, you check that weather, right? And so a lot of people rely on this data.
It can also be critical for severe weather, as it plays a critical role in the formation of hurricanes, being able to track and predict with greater accuracy the impact that these hurricanes can have on land. The spacecraft engineering team has a number of cameras that they're looking at for today, many of them based at the bottom underneath the launch pad, and that's where they can see their equipment that shows how they get switched on internal power when they go to the battery power on board the spacecraft. It's a big moment to come off of shore power, which is the power on land, to then switch to internal. The spacecraft team likes to have those batteries charged up as much as possible so that when they go into orbit, should they not get the signal right away, they can keep operating until they do get the signal. But they do very much, get those batteries charged as much as possible before they switch over to internal power.
Yes, and like you were saying, that switch over is just basically the spacecraft no longer relying on the ground systems for that power. As you just mentioned, the spacecraft is able to rely on its own internal power at this point.
All right, we passed into loading of helium on board the Falcon 9 rocket. The helium, of course, used to pressurize the propellant tanks to be able to push that propellant through the engines so that it can burn. Coming up at T-minus 20 minutes and 30 seconds, we'll start chilling the strong back so that we can load those propellants into the second stage.
Yes, and we're going to see the effect of that on the second stage when those tanks start venting.
Stage 2
LOX.
RP1 load is complete.
It's much warmer here in Vandenberg than it's going to be inside of those tanks. So as a result, we're going to see that gas boiling off and venting out of the system in order to maintain the tank's pressures.
And there you see it venting out. The beginning of the chilling process of the strongback to load that super chilled liquid oxygen into the second stage. You're watching live coverage of Sentinel-6B. This is the Mission Director Center at the Vandenberg Space Force Base. As part of a global effort, Sentinel-6B will keep the long-running measure of sea level on track. Let's take a closer look now at its real-world impacts.
Sentinel-6B is this really exciting high-tech satellite mission where we're measuring the height of the ocean from space. If we think about shipping, national security, fisheries, all of these depend on this information.
The ocean is very dynamic, it changes all the time. Having a measurement really is important towards understanding what's happening with the ocean, both in real time, but also in terms of forecasting.
We're in the business of trying to avoid emergencies, not just respond to them after the fact.
Sentinel-6 is a unique project, so it consists of 2 satellites built as twins, and the first one was launched, Sentinel-6 Mike Freilich, in 2020. The second one was built in parallel. We literally have hundreds, if not thousands of people working to build these programs together.
So Sentinel-6 Micro Freilich has been looking at the Earth, sea level around the globe, and now Sentinel-6B is going to take over. We've been tracking changes to sea level using satellites since 1992, so it's been more than 30 years now.
The way the Sentinel-6B measures is it sends a radar signal down to the surface of the ocean and measures how long it takes that signal to get back to the satellite. And from that, we can really get a very accurate measurement of how sea levels are changing locally and on a global scale, down to about a 1-inch accuracy.
Very dangerous Hurricane Milton rapidly approaching the west coast of the Florida Peninsula with multiple life-threatening hazards.
In 2024, Hurricane Milton intensified very rapidly, and Sentinel-6 Micro Freilich data were able to help us forecast this intensification.
Better predictions allow people to get out of the way before the storm hits. It allows them to take measures to protect their homes and their businesses. It allows emergency crews time to set up. All of these things are going to save lives.
That's the goal, is really to have data that's available within hours of the observations.
Sea level measurements are really critical to a number of different industries. So if you think about the packages that show up at your home, the expectation is that they arrive on time and arrive quickly. And Sentinel-6B can provide us the information we need to understand how to move things as quickly as possible from one part of the Earth to the other. So from a national security perspective, the U.S. military has installations all across the globe in coastal areas. Understanding the change in water level is really critical to preparedness.
With fishing, that data is used to understand where the fish are, how healthy they are, how they can be sustained, and how they can be managed better.
Sentinel-6B carries on this legacy of measuring sea level in a very consistent and very accurate manner.
Sentinel-6B will really propel us into the next decade and continue that sustained, highly accurate observation.
And understanding how water is moving in the open ocean, how it's moving close to the coast, that's really important information for us to protect our way of life.
And Sentinel-6B will get there by riding on this Falcon 9 rocket, which just passed through another milestone, and that is the beginning of Stage 2 LOX load. Again, Stage 2 LOX load beginning at T-minus 16 minutes and 45 seconds. We hit that just almost a minute ago. We are complete with loading propellant in the RP1 in the second stage, and we continue to load LOX in the first stage and propellant in the first stage as well. We're rapidly moving down to our terminal count, which kicks off at T-minus 10 minutes. This is the Mission Director Center at Vandenberg Space Force Base for coverage of Sentinel-6B. A little bit about the spacecraft flying today. Sentinel-6B is about the length of a pickup truck. It flies 830 miles above the Earth, about 1,200 kilometers, circling the planet about 13 times a day at over 16,000 miles an hour. In about 10 days, it covers nearly 90% of our oceans. And it does so with that 66-degree tilt, that inclination that allows it to make those sweeping observations. Power for Sentinel-6 comes from 4 solar panels that feed a 200 amp hour battery built from more than 1,100 lithium-ion cells. And so if you think about that angle of inclination, that's 66 degrees, if you imagine the globe, you were to put a rubber band around the equator, and then you were to tilt it 66 degrees and then spin that globe, that's the coverage that this satellite and the 3 other ocean observing satellites cover. That's how they get that 90% of the ocean. The only thing that's left out are the polar caps, where of course we don't have a whole lot of ocean up there, so it's not as much of a problem. We're continuing to mark the milestones as we count down to our T0 of 9:21 and 42 seconds. Now sitting at T-minus 12 minutes. We started loading locks on the second stage. And a little bit deeper into the count, we've got some other major milestones.
Yeah, coming up at about T-minus 7 minutes, we will be in the terminal count and hear that engine chill has begun on the first stage.
You said 6-7, and I started waving my hands, just for the record. The payload, of course, is Sentinel-6B, and it's joining that global network known as the Copernicus program that's been tracking ocean and atmospheric weather since 2014. And it builds on the long-term global sea level data that began in 1992 by the French-U.S. Topex Poseidon satellite. That was then followed by the Jason series of satellite missions.
The data that we receive from these satellites helps to develop the models that drive every modern weather and forecast. Agencies such as NOAA use this data to refine storm and climate pattern predictions.
And we just got a call out that the spacecraft is on internal power. It's a little early, but obviously that's something that they calculated. Eventually we go to internal power for both the spacecraft and the rocket.
Continuing on with information about Sentinel-6B, the data from the spacecraft and all of the satellites prior to this one guide SpaceX meteorologists in deciding when to launch, where to land, and how to plan logistics around shifting conditions worldwide. Space systems like the Copernicus program that you just mentioned help connect life on Earth, making life more resilient and safer for us, especially around natural disaster events.
We're inside of T-minus 10 minutes and counting. A quick recap if you're just joining us. We had a improvement in the weather forecast for today's launch, going to 90% go for weather after looking at a number of low pressure systems that had been bringing a lot of rain to the area. In fact, some record amounts of rain. But that cleared out in time for our launch weather officer to give us the green light for both weather and the range. Teams came on console a number of hours, several hours before today's T0. We got our COLA report and then the NLM poll at T-minus 43 minutes, and that kicked off our tanking at T-minus 35 minutes. And we've been loading propellant since. We're starting to get down into the final milestones before liftoff. We just heard from the spacecraft team that we are on internal power for Sentinel-6B, located inside those fairing halves that you see there at the top of the rocket. And as we approach these final minutes, we have a number of milestones that are coming up.
That first milestone that's coming up is T-minus 7 minutes. When we reach that point, we are then in the terminal count, and Falcon 9 will begin engine chill. Prior to any propellant flowing, the plumbing on the engines are chilled down, and this just prevents any thermal shock of the system when the cryopropellant liquid starts flowing at a higher flow rate. If you think about it like a glass cup, and you pour very cold liquid in that. If that glass cup is at room temperature and you just shock that cup with the cold liquid, it could crack. The same thing is being done here.
That thermal conditioning is important, as you mentioned, for all aspects, especially the engines when they're getting ready to fire up, but we also pre-chill the lines. SpaceX has also upgraded their ability to recycle a count out here by improving their LOX farm. They can now do 3 consecutive launch attempts in a row if needed. Hopefully we won't need it and we'll get it off today.
Engine chill.
And there's the stage 1 engine chill that you mentioned. Now at about a minute, RP1 loading for the first stage will wrap up, completing the fuel side of the propellant equation for the booster. SpaceX uses RP1, which is rocket-grade kerosene. And then for liquid oxygen, that's the oxidizer. Those are the primary propellants.
That LOX propellant is chilled to just under negative 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Because the propellant has to be so cold, it is loaded later in the count. This is intentional in order to load denser propellant. The denser the propellant, the more propellant you can fit in the tanks. The more propellant you have, the more propellant that you fly. That means the more performance you get. If for any reason we are unable to launch today, which we are not expecting that, those propellants would need to be chilled back down again before our next launch attempt.
After 3 launch attempts, SpaceX would then go to 1 day off and then another attempt after that day, and they would alternate if it came to that. But we are green across the board today, so we're not expecting to have to explore any of those options. T-minus 5 minutes, 27 seconds and counting. Up next, looking to start pressurizing the tanks for strong back retract.
Falcon 9 tanks are pressurizing for strong back retract.
That strong back, which is giving the rocket its support right now, also known as the transporter erector, it's going to start retracting from the rocket here at T-minus 4 minutes and 30 seconds, so in just a few seconds. That truss structure is hinged at the base. It has clamp arms around the second stage that open
Strong
slowly.
back retract has started.
And there go the clamp arms, opening up, releasing the rocket. And now we have the final NLM poll.
LD?
Yes, LD. NASA is go for the Sentinel-6B launch.
Copy all. Good news.
And there you have it. NASA launch manager Tim Dunn giving the final go as we count down to the final minutes before the liftoff of the Sentinel-6B satellite riding a Falcon 9 rocket. You see the strong back fully angling back. It's a good visual indication that we are right on time.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
And as we just heard, Stage 1 LOX load has completed, and this completes all prop loading on that booster. Both fuel and LOX tanks are pressurized using helium. So in flight, that helium just helps push propellants down inside of the tanks and into the engines.
T-minus 2 minutes and 30 seconds and counting. At T-minus 60 seconds, Falcon 9 will enter startup. At that point, the rocket's onboard flight computers take over. From there on out, the countdown is fully autonomous. Just inside of T-minus 2 seconds, the 9 Merlin 1D engines will ignite. And once they're at full power, Falcon 9 will lift off the pad and begin its climb to orbit. After engine start, Falcon's vehicles are held down until all systems are go.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
And there we have it. Stage 2 LOX load has completed. And that concludes Stage 2 prop loading entirely. And as we can see now on the live video feed of the Falcon 9 rocket standing proud and tall, you can see white gas venting from the rocket. That gas is not smoke, Daryl. It is actually oxygen venting from the tank, maintaining those tanks' pressures. We just heard the call out for gas closeout. It's beginning. This just means that the tanks will be topped off and the vents will be sealed to maintain tank pressure. Let's listen in for that confirmation that Falcon 9 startup has begun at T-minus 1 minute.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
At this point, the autonomous flight computers have taken over the launch countdown, and stages 1 and 2 are pressurizing for launch.
LD is go for launch.
We just heard the SpaceX launch director give the final go.
All systems are go.
T-minus 3 seconds.
The range is green. Weather is green. The final seconds of countdown.
T-minus 15 seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. And liftoff of Falcon 9. Go SpaceX, go Sentinel-6B.
Sentinel-6B rising, extending nearly 4 decades of the precise sea level record from space.
Falcon 9 booster is currently firing all 9 of those Merlin engines at 190,000 pounds of thrust per engine, and we can hear it, and soon we're going to feel that in our chest. So exciting. After about 50 seconds, those engines will begin throttling down to slow down the vehicle to prepare for max Q. Think of it as kind of like a low-key fire. Max Q, or maximum aerodynamic pressure, is when Falcon 9 will feel the largest structural load of the vehicle that it's going to see during its entire boost phase of flight. Slowing down the vehicle just means that Falcon 9 is going to experience a less load.
Now traveling faster than the speed of sound, preparing for max Q. Now we have a few events coming up in quick succession, starting with main engine cutoff, or MECO. That's when SpaceX will shut down all of its 9 engines on the first stage.
Shortly after MECO, stage 2 will separate from the inner stage in the booster, and then the second stage is going to continue on, igniting the Merlin vacuum engine. We're going to hear the call out for that second engine start 1, or SES-1. That burn should last just under 6 minutes.
A lot of clouds in the area, so our ground shots not able to pick up that traditional flight into the night sky, but we are looking right down the barrel of the first stage with the onboard camera. Again, the clouds not enough to stop launch, but certainly from a low pressure system in the area.
Main engine cutoff.
Standing by for main engine cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed. MVAC ignition. Stage 1 boost back startup.
That was a beautiful light up of the second stage, and you're looking now getting ready for the fairings to come off. That's our next big milestone. Confirmed. And there go the fairings. You see now Sentinel-6 exposed to the elements of space. Now soaring towards orbit, another step complete in our ongoing effort to understand Earth's heartbeat through its oceans.
Back shutdown.
We're 50 seconds into the second stage first burn. And now the first stage booster basically hitting the brakes by firing 3 of its 9 engines to reverse course and head back down towards the landing zone.
This burn that we're seeing here of the second stage Merlin vacuum engine will last just under 6 minutes. This will take Sentinel-6B to its parking orbit. That's going to be followed by a 45-minute coast, where we're just going to allow and rely on orbital mechanics and physics to take the spacecraft the majority of the rest of the way. This is the exact same flight design and trajectory that we flew back in 2020 on Sentinel-6 Michael Freilich.
Today's first stage booster heading back down to the landing zone, which was formerly the Space Launch Complex 4 West. It's just about a quarter of a mile from the launch pad. So if you're in the area, you will expect to hear the double sonic boom once it breaks the sound barrier on the way back down. We have 2 minutes and 10 seconds left in this first burn. We're at T plus 6 minutes and 15 seconds into flight. First stage entry burn, just a minute away. The Falcon Stage 2 rocket and the Sentinel-6B now racing southward across the Pacific Ocean, just off the coast of Baja California, Mexico. A few seconds away now from the first stage entry burn.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
And there we have it. That first stage entry burn has just begun. That landing burn,
Stage 2 is
it's going to last about 25 seconds. That burn just helps reduce the speed of the vehicle to ensure a softer touchdown of the booster. Falcon 9 is using a few of the Merlin engines and 4 grid fins to help guide and orient the booster on its way down.
Stage 1 entry
Those
burn
4 grid fins are out. And the burn is complete.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
It's awfully dark out there, so we don't have a lot of illumination. But when they do light those burns, we get a good view. So look at our ground track.
MVAC shutdown.
And we should be coming up on the end
Nominal
of our
orbit
burn.
insertion.
There you heard
Stage
it.
1 transonic. Stage 1 FTS is saved. Stage 1 landing burn.
A good first burn. Now here comes the booster. Back down on land. We just heard a big sonic boom here in the broadcast booth. The landing pad coming into view, 4 landing legs extended. And there you heard it. The booster, its job complete, back on land, and ready for another flight.
My goodness, Daryl, that never gets old.
That was really loud. That was pretty awesome. We hear cheers from the folks at the Mission Director Center who all ran outside to try and get a glimpse of the rocket. They may not have seen it, but they certainly heard it, felt it, and they definitely heard and felt that sonic boom for the first stage coming back down. So now the second stage, you're looking at the Sentinel-6B riding on top of the second stage, will coast for about 44 minutes. And then we'll go to a second burn of that MVAC-D engine, only about 11 seconds or so. And that'll be followed by a big moment, the separation of the Sentinel-6B from the second stage rocket. How you feeling so far, Nikki?
Oh, man, I feel great. This is incredible. I'm just so honored and humbled to be here, be a part of this rich and long history. Very cool moment. Like I said, it just never gets old, feeling and hearing those sonic booms, hearing our partners run outside and cheer for that incredible moment.
And there's plenty of work to go. As we continue, we will monitor the progress of the coast phase and bring you some videos to tell you a little bit about Sentinel-6B and its mission. We hope you stick around. And then ultimately, that deployment about 42 minutes from now. You're watching live coverage of Sentinel-6B. This is the Mission Director Center at the Vandenberg Space Force Base. We just saw Karen St. Germain, who's in charge of our Science Mission Directorate here at NASA, hand out a few hugs to the team there. And there in the back of the room, coming back from the view outside, Nadia Venegrova Schiffer, our Sentinel-6 program scientist, there in the back of the room. Great anticipation as we now march towards the second burn and separation. This is the Mission Director Center at the Vandenberg Space Force Base. Sentinel-6B will sharpen Earth and ocean forecasts and even improve how NASA plans safe re-entries for astronauts returning from the moon. And as NASA prepares for those future crews, let's get you caught up on Artemis II, a crewed test flight around the moon, now just months away.
Just last month, crews with NASA's Exploration Ground System program lifted the Orion spacecraft on top of the fully stacked SLS, or Space Launch Systems rocket. You can see it is now a fully integrated moon rocket as it sits inside the vehicle assembly building at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Teams will perform tests on Orion and SLS with the ground equipment before it is rolled out to Launch Complex 39B for launch. Orion is set to take NASA astronauts Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Cook, and Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen around the moon and back during the 10-day Artemis II test flight. This mission will ensure Orion is ready to fly with astronauts on board and for future Artemis missions to the moon's surface and beyond. That's your Artemis Moon Minute.
With the Artemis II mission and its test flight around the moon. But right now we are focused on Sentinel-6B, currently in a coast phase. To recap for you, we launched at 9:21:42 seconds Pacific Standard Time from the Vandenberg Space Force Base here along the central coast of California. We have been flying for 16 minutes. We had a good first burn of the first booster, and then the second stage had a good first burn and good orbital insertion. And so now there'll be some modification of how Sentinel-6B is oriented with regards to flying through space. And Nikki Russell, our vehicle systems engineer with Launch Services Program, and our co-commentator for this evening. It's interesting, there's an instrument on board Sentinel-6B, the Advanced Microwave Radiometer, that has to have special care taken with regards to how much sun exposure it can have. Explain that.
So part of flight design and trajectory is spacecraft requirements. That's an input into those analyses. So as you just mentioned, this AMR, Advanced Microwave Radiometer, which is a NASA-provided microwave radiometer that measures path delay due to atmospheric water vapor along the altimeter path. It has some sensitivities. It's sensitive to solar exposure through its aperture, so as a result, Sentinel-6B must separate in an orientation which protects it from the sun's view. SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket is able to do this by taking advantage of its internal flight software, which tracks the sun's location relative to the spacecraft in each position.
So eventually we will get illumination and pick up the signal of the second stage, which has a camera on it, and the cameras we've been seeing, both of the engine and of the Sentinel-6B. And we'll note that it is turned at that angle, that special angle, to keep that that special equipment away from the sun. Don't want to burn its eyes.
Exactly.
Me and you, we use sunglasses.
Yes.
But Sentinel-6, we just turn it away.
Perfect.
Don't look. Don't look at the sun. We're T plus 18 minutes and counting. This is launch coverage of Sentinel-6B, live from Vandenberg, California, at NASA's Mission Director Center. T plus, 24 minutes and counting here at the Mission Director Center at the Vandenberg Space Force Base, tracking the progress of second stage of the Falcon 9 rocket, coasting with the Sentinel-6B satellite. You're looking at a ground track as we approach the coast of Chile along the South American continent. Sentinel-6B is giving NASA the most precise sea level data yet once it goes into orbit and gets operational. And this will be critical for communities living on the coast, just like right there in Chile. Here's more on why that matters.
It doesn't even take a big storm to get into flooding conditions. We call that nuisance flooding or sunny day flooding because there could be no cloud in the sky, the sun is out, and you still have flooding in your streets. So in coastal communities across the globe, we're living with water. And depending on where that water is, it could be safe for us or it can start to push us into flooding conditions. Sentinel-6B provides us with the data that we really need to prepare for the changes that are underway and that might occur in the future. So the way the Sentinel-6B measures is it sends a radar signal down to the surface of the ocean and measures how long it takes that signal to get back to the satellite. And from that, we can really get a very accurate measurement of how sea levels are changing locally and on a global scale, down to about a 1-inch accuracy. Sentinel-6B provides us really critical information we need for planning and preparing for the changes that we see from day to day, from decade to decade. Communities that were built over a century ago were built in such a way they knew where the average high tide was and were built with kind of a safety factor. They knew it wouldn't flood all the time. As sea levels change, however, we start to push into flooding conditions. So your high tide that maybe wasn't a problem in the past now becomes a problem and leads to flooding, to impact to businesses. So it's really important that we're able to track those changes over time.
watching NASA's live launch coverage of the Sentinel-6B mission to space. We're live at the Mission Directors Center in Vandenberg at the Space Force Base here. Currently T plus 31 minutes and counting into the mission. As you see, stage 2 and the spacecraft passing over the southern tip of Chile. It's currently at an altitude of 200 kilometers, traveling at a speed of 7.5 kilometers a second. Coming up in about 19 minutes, we're going to have that second burn. It's going to last about 11 seconds. And we'll wait about 5 minutes of coast, and then we'll see the deployment of the Sentinel-6B satellite. Sentinel-6B is the newest chapter in a decades-long legacy of sea level measurement missions. Here now is how that story began.
Sentinel-6B is the latest satellite tracking Earth's changing oceans. As the twin to Sentinel-6 Michael Freilich, it keeps the baton moving to prevent any breaks in sea level measurements. It will scan roughly 90% of Earth's oceans in near real time, continuing a record that began over 3 decades ago. In the 1990s, NASA and the French space agency CNES launched TOPEX Poseidon, followed by the Jason series. Meanwhile, the European Space Agency created their own successful Earth observation program called Copernicus, which includes the Sentinel series. Those efforts came together in Sentinel-6 Michael Freilich. Now its twin, Sentinel-6B, carries that mission forward. Built through an international partnership between NASA, ESA, EUMETSAT, NOAA, the European Commission, and CNES, Sentinel-6B delivers vital data that scientists, communities, and leaders will rely on for years to come.
So space, night, death, darkness, not being there is an essential component of being there. You don't have the one without the other. That's the way being is made up.
Inside the Mission Directors Center at the Vandenberg Space Force Base, as the leadership, various programs and international partners all assembled here, tracking and watching the mission. We see Karen St. Germain in the second row on the right-hand side, second from the left. She is part of the Science Mission Directorate. I misstated when I said she led it. She is the Division Director of the Earth Science Division and has been here on site providing expertise in our news conferences and is tracking as her team prepares to deploy this satellite. Nikki Russell is here as our Launch Services Program co-commentator. Nikki, you've been listening to the nets.
Yeah.
What have you heard?
It's been very quiet, very calm on the nets, which is exactly what we want to hear.
Yeah, that's a good news report right there. That's good to hear. As we are zipping around the globe now, currently at an altitude of 200 kilometers above the ocean, now moving into the southern Atlantic. Getting ready for that really quick burn. Once that burn is complete, about 5 minutes later, we'll have separation of Sentinel-6B, and we will have live video of that feed as it separates, giving us the visual confirmation. Of course, the teams will be watching their consoles here at the European Space Operations Center in Darmstadt, Germany, where they will be taking over after separation. And they will get Sentinel-6B up into its proper orbit. The second stage of the Falcon 9 will be dropping it off at just 20 kilometers below that orbit, and then the spacecraft team that you see in this room here will then raise it to that proper orbit where it will join that caravan of ocean monitoring satellites that include Sentinel-6 Michael Freilich, Jason 3, and SWAT. Sentinel-6 quickly around the globe here. The Launch Services Program went to great lengths to make sure that the satellite would be able to handle the rigors of launch, the shaking, the vibration. And how did they do that?
So back 5 years ago, during the Sentinel-6 Michael Freilich integration efforts, SpaceX and LSP partnered together to develop a new structure that the spacecrafts sit on top of. This structure just helps dampen out those environments, dynamic environments, acoustics, and those vibrations. They're kind of similar to the shock absorbers on your truck or your SUV.
Helps give a smooth ride.
Yes, exactly. Making sure Sentinel-6B is nice and cozy and doesn't feel any of that vibration on its way up and into orbit, following this long and rich history of these sea level measuring satellites.
And that burn that's coming up, it'll need some shock absorption once that MVAC-D lights up for 11 seconds and then cuts off. It's a short burn.
It is a short burn. That 11 seconds is just a little extra push to get the spacecraft exactly where we want it to be in orbit. So prior to that 10-second burn, 11-second burn, is a 45-minute coast approximately. And so during that time, we're just relying on orbital mechanics and physics to take Sentinel-6B most of the way there. So this 11-second burn is just a little bit of a push.
A little bit of a push is all we need to get into that orbit to allow the team there at the ESOC to take over. Of course, they'll have to get that signal acquired. We will continue tracking Sentinel-6B as it coasts its way around the world, getting ready for its second burn and separation. You're watching live coverage of Sentinel-6B from the Vandenberg Space Force Station in Central California. T plus 46 minutes and counting into the mission, and you're looking at a beautiful shot of Sentinel-6B over the southern Atlantic, approaching the coast of South Africa. Got a large low pressure system in view, a lot of clouds. But we see that angle that Sentinel-6B is canted at so that it's not taking that sun directly into its AMR instrument.
That's correct. And what a beautiful sight this is over Earth.
And there you're looking at the MVAC engine that is powering the Sentinel-6B through the coast phase, getting ready to power it on a second stage, second burn. It's coming up in just about 5 minutes from now. T plus 50 minutes and counting as Sentinel-6B currently in a coast phase on the second stage of a Falcon 9 rocket, approaching Madagascar, just off the coast of South Africa at the moment. Second stage prepping, getting ready for that second burn, which is expected here at just a minute.
And that burn will be approximately 11 seconds long. The Merlin vacuum engine has a thrust level of 220,000 pounds of thrust, so very powerful engine, propelling Sentinel-6B to where it needs to be in space.
And the reason this shot is so beautiful is because of the high orbit that Sentinel-6B will be going into. It's currently at an altitude of 1,321 kilometers, traveling at a speed of 6.9 kilometers a second.
MVAC startup.
A little bit of ice buildup floating off. The engine is firing up. Our second burn.
And MBAC shutdown.
As promised, it was a quick one, just
Nominal
over 10
orbit
seconds
insertion.
long. And we got the call for good nominal orbit insertion.
And that 11-second burn is going to be followed by an about 5-minute coast. And then Sentinel-6B will hopefully, we're very optimistic that it will join as part of this rich history of these sea level measuring satellites. This is the third generation of these missions, 30 years, 3 decades. Previous to this set was Jason, with Jason 3 being LSP's first SpaceX mission on a Falcon 9 rocket. Previously, these flew on United Launch Alliance's Delta II, which is now a retired rocket.
And now the spacecraft team at the ESOC, the European Space Operations Center in Darmstadt, Germany, getting ready to start looking for a signal immediately after separation. It's going to take a bit, probably about a half hour or so after separation, but they are standing by. Our time to separate is T plus 57 minutes and 13 seconds. So a little under 4 minutes from now. Sentinel-6B spacecraft. Once it separates, it will pre-sense that it has separated. It has brake wires that will break once it comes off the second stage, and that will trigger its systems to turn on and begin transmitting. Parag Baze, the program manager for Sentinel-6 with NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, told me the receiver will be always on, but the transmitter, it will take time to get it oriented in the proper orientation so that its antenna is facing down and towards Earth, so that it can be picked up by the ground stations along the path. Again, it's going into an orbit just 20 kilometers below its target orbit so that the ESOC can raise it up into the orbit. And what a view this is, as you see Sentinel-6 looking over the horizon of our planet from 1,322 kilometers above the surface of the Earth. And we're now just a few seconds away from the expected big moment of separation of Sentinel-6B from the second stage of a Falcon 9 rocket. We've got a crystal clear shot of the spacecraft and the rocket.
Sentinel-6B
Less than 10
deploy
seconds from
confirmed.
separation. And there she goes. Sentinel-6B flying free. Another international partnership taking its place among the fleet of satellites tracking Earth's vital signs from 800 miles above our planet. And look at it go.
Wow, that's incredible, Daryl. And big congratulations to this team of international partners.
We just heard NASA launch manager on his net congratulating the spacecraft team. And a picture perfect separation as you're literally center of the globe watching this satellite go off to do its work. It'll be some days before it does get to work, but with that good separation just off the coast of Madagascar at an altitude of 1,321 kilometers, the team here at the ESOC, the European Space Operations Center, now searching for a signal. Just to recap, we launched at 9:21 and 42 seconds Pacific time from here at the Vandenberg Space Force Base. We saw the first stage booster do its job for about 2.5 minutes. It came back to the launch pad just about a quarter mile away, landed at its landing spot with a thunderous boom. The second stage then burned for about 5 minutes and 50 seconds. Put it on track to get into its orbit. We watched it through a 45-minute coast phase and culminated with a second stage 10-second burn and then separation. Just a tremendous views along the way. And the LSP team, this brings a conclusion to years of work on this project, Nikki.
Yes, 30 years of work, 30 years of history, 3 decades of this team partnering together to provide the world globally weather forecasts, sea level rise measurements, and everything else that it provides to us.
Of course, we will continue to track the progress of Sentinel-6B on our social media channels, and we also have a blog that you can go to for updates, timely updates of the progress as we look back at the sun from the second stage. For mission updates like acquisition of signal, just go to the blog that you see on your screen, science.nasa.gov/mission/Sentinel-6B. Again, science.nasa.gov/mission/Sentinel-6B. I want to thank everybody for helping us out and putting this broadcast together. And certainly want to thank my co-commentator, Nikki Russell, with Launch Services Program. Thank you so much for being here and lending us insight into the work and the mission and the technology that went into making this mission happen.
And thank you so much for having me here, Daryl. This was really special.
Well, enjoyed it. It was a rainy 4 days, but it all culminated with a beautiful sunset and a clearing of the weather just in time to get this mission off. And boy, what a way to end it, with a tremendous view of the separation of Sentinel-6B going off into space. That was lovely. And that's going to wrap up our coverage for Sentinel-6B. Thank you all for joining us. We leave you now with a replay of liftoff from here at the Vandenberg Space Force Base along the central coast of California.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition and liftoff of Falcon 9. Go SpaceX, go Sentinel-6B.
Sentinel-6B rising, extending nearly 4 decades of the precise sea level record from space.
Falcon 9 booster is currently